but we want to try and understand what themes are represented in the room. तो post-it पर आपको अपना नाम लिखना है और आपके काम का क्या focus है. So if you're focused on forest rights, if you're focused on groundwater, if you're focused on biodiversity conservation, for example, whatever that is, and it's possible you work in multiple areas, but if you can choose one or two that really are the focus of your work, it will help us make thematic groups. Depending on the number, we'll see what if we have to do an activity or not. But that's what Paras is going to be doing. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, I'll invite Roshni, Bala, at least to get us started talking about the alliance. You want a chair or something?
No. I'll prefer to stand. To be here to change the slides. Okay, thank you all of you for coming and taking your time to listen to us. So, like Akshay said, I'll be just giving you a background of why we are here and why are we trying to do what we're trying to do. But before that, just some context. I mean, here we're all for commons convening, and one of the most omnipresent and prevalent commons is our freshwaters. When I say freshwaters, it encompasses a diverse types of habitats or ecosystems. There are rivers, there are aquifers, groundwater, lakes, wetlands, even estuaries, swamps, things like that. And when it comes to the status of our freshwater ecosystems in our country, it's not a very pretty state, and which is something that is also echoed globally. So one of the recent reports published by WWF called the Living Planet Index, it sort of demonstrated that freshwater ecosystems are the most affected or degraded ecosystems across all types of ecosystems. And freshwater biodiversity is deteriorating at a very fast rate. About 84% of freshwater species around the world have been lost already. I'm just giving you this grim picture not to sadden the day, but to put emphasis on the kind of urgency that is required to work on these ecosystems and to consider freshwaters not just as resources, but also as a part of ecosystems that provide several ecological, hydrological processes and benefits to us humans. Yeah, just again, not a very pretty picture from our own country. We are pretty well versed with the kind of news and the kind of issues that we've seen across our freshwaters. And basically, what we've been thinking, which is not very new, but that's something that needs to be amplified and focused on, is, like I said, focusing on freshwaters as ecosystems and not just as resources. And this particular aspect needs to be brought at the forefront because it is the natural functioning, intactness, and the interconnectivity between these ecosystems that sustains these processes. And these objectives and actions need to be linked up not just locally, but at a national and a regional level. And that basically forms the basis of what our Alliance for Conserving Freshwater Ecosystems tries to do, is to bring this issue to the forefront and provide those conditions for individuals, organizations, networks to work on these issues. Yeah, so like I said, the key objectives of this alliance is basically to bring together key players working in the field of freshwater conservation to support conservation planning of freshwaters and action in the country, to provide a platform for exchange of information, ideas, tools, and data, and to help strengthen the enabling conditions that enable us to do conservation action on the ground in the country. Just a short history. Although we are pretty new, just probably a few months old right now, but the workings behind this have been on for quite a bit of time, about four and a half years or so, where some of us started an initiative on freshwater prioritization in the country, which basically focused on developing resources and knowledge at a national level. We worked with the several key organizations at a regional scale, also at a basin level, which we now call the Upper Bhima Collective, which one of our teammates will also talk about shortly. sort of spearheading a conservation action planning process, first of its kind actually. And sort of all of these inputs sort of helped us form this idea towards forming a consortium of organizations, of individuals rather, that can ultimately sort of focus towards freshwater ecosystem conservation in the country. And one of the things that we did in the past was to develop a collaborative conservation vision for freshwater ecosystems in India. This was developed by about 30 organizations or so through a workshop, where basically they defined 2030 and 2050 goals for freshwater ecosystems in the country, and that forms the basis of what the Alliance ultimately aims to sort of work towards. We have currently identified 5 key pillars where the Alliance sort of wants to work towards. First is to build regional collectives. And I think this kind of connects directly with one of the sessions we had just now around multi-actor platforms. Support regional collectives in conservation action planning. Mainstream the freshwater ecosystem mindset across organizations, networks, etc. Developing or advancing certain tools, solutions for freshwater conservation, and to improve the access of knowledge and data for freshwater conservation in the country. This is just a snippet of what some of the work that we have done in the past couple of years, ranging from stakeholder analysis at the national level to some broad policy analysis to see gaps from the freshwater conservation point of view, some spatial analysis at a national scale where we categorize our watersheds state based on several data sets and parameters, and also define the status of the enabling conditions, which state is better equipped with supporting freshwater conservation on the ground. One of the key things that, like I said, we have started with is collaborative freshwater conservation planning, where the most prominent things that have happened is the formation of the Upper Bhima Collective that has spearheaded this whole thing. And to talk about the Upper Bhima Collective, I'll invite Ashwini just to give a short overview of what this collective is all about. Apart from that, we've been also trying to initiate some work in Papagni Basin, and there's been some collaborative work happening in the Northeast region. But over to Ashwini for just a snippet on the Upper Bhima Collective.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, as mentioned by Roshni, what we did, which was spearheaded by TNC, FES, and Oloy Labs, in Pune, we met almost 7 to 8 times over a span of 1.5 years. And the Bhima River Basin is one of the important river basins in Maharashtra. So, where we started, or I don't have a map here. Do we have a map of Upper Bhima? Okay, fine. So it covers a major part of the Pune district as well. Starts from the crest line, moves all the way down to Solapur and beyond. That's how the Bhima River flows, and you have several tributaries in that. What we started was there's this nomenclature, Upper Bhima and Lower Bhima, even if they are a part of the single river basin. But for the feasibility, for convenience, and in Pune, we had a lot of organizations coming together who worked in the upper region of this Bhima River basin. And then, of course, you have organizations who work beyond Solapur or in Solapur also and beyond that. The idea here is that we bring out people together who talk about conservation. We also had a lot of insights from organizations who have been working in this river basin, say on surface waters, pollution, groundwater, agriculture, so on and so forth. So what are the challenges in this river basin? So one is obviously the sugarcane, and it's a crop which is very water intensive. It's there in most of the areas of Maharashtra where its drought is there, or where the groundwater tables are declining, the soils are growing fallow, and many such problems are still being there. But it's still a cash crop, and farmers are not letting to move away from that. So we form this collective, and now the idea is we work in this. So what do we mean by work in this? And in this collective, we have organizations who have expertise, say in groundwater, who have worked in surface waters, organizations who do a lot of citizen-led movements, river walks, making and advocating citizens that why rivers are important, how you should look at them, say weekend walks, so on and so forth. And of course, the local government, which is very important. In Maharashtra, we also have something called, so on the lines of Namami Gange, we have something called as a program called Namami Chandrabhaga. So it's a larger river, and it's a state government-led project. So where a lot of councils come together, they have done some baselining, aligning certain things, and what all interventions can be done along these lines. So for that, we have one of the key persons in the government. She is quite responsive and active about it. So the Alliance also met her last year, where we took it that, okay, it's not just one organization who is talking about it, but several different organizations who are talking about it. And we presented what all we wanted to do. What we expect right now from them is not a monetary support, but an endorsement or a support that they are willing to support or work with this alliance. And now, when we say that we want to work, means what we want to do. So what we have tried to do here is, we have tried to carve out an area in this upper Bhima basin. So one river is called as an Indrayani river. It starts again slightly upwards of Pune and flows all the way down. So we are in a format of making a small restoration proposal for this Indrayani river with certain organizations in these alliance, and then submit it to a potential funder, a CSR, and also Indrayani river restoration is undertaken by the state government of Maharashtra as well. Why particularly this river and why not other rivers in the upper Bhima? Nothing like that. It's just that this river is very much there in the news because of pollution. Lot of industries are based in and around this river. Lot of pollution enters this particular river. It's affecting the local livelihood, also affecting the fish population in that river. Personally, I have studied that because I have a PhD in freshwater fishes. So I had sampled those areas, and we do see a lot of declining fish population, so on and so forth. The natives are being replaced by others, so on, so that. So now the alliance, or certain people or certain organizations in this alliance, are leading towards an effort where we are concentrating on restoration of this one particular river, that's the Indrayani river. And the idea is we'd make a 3-year restoration plan, which includes biodiversity, baselining, pollution studies, so on and so forth, and also certain interventions, which could be nature-based solutions, which are again co-created in certain academic labs who are a part of this alliance as well. So if we can do certain pilots and show that if you do these NBS solutions at this place, the pollution might reduce. But like it had been pointed out in the morning sessions, it's mainly with a lot of scientific rigor we want to do it. So not just as a stopgap solution, or the way typically CSRs want to put something, they want to see some result, but in a more stratified manner, in a more knowledge encompassing manner is what we plan to do as a first part of the Upper Bhima collective.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Ashwini. So that basically, this is just a picture of the members of our collective and the conservation action plan that was developed recently for freshwaters. So I think that was the broad introduction of the alliance that kind of works aiming to work at a national level, with the regional collectives being its so to speak, implementation units. Um, like I mentioned, one of the key things that the Alliance we want to sort of work on is this idea of mainstreaming freshwater ecosystems, um, and that mindset or that perspective. You may have heard of biodiversity mainstreaming, especially if people have worked with or read about CBD and the Convention of Biological Diversity. So it's something on those lines. And I think what is basically that I will hand over to my colleague Bala. But before that, I just wanted to put things in the landscape perspective. So when I talk about freshwater ecosystems, um, I think it's pretty apparent that at least maybe because I'm a freshwater scientist, that's why. But it's a unit of a landscape that sort of connects all several other ecosystems as well. So connectivity, natural connectivity within a freshwater ecosystem, it is inherent natural property. And this connectivity is threefolded. One is obviously the upstream, downstream connectivity. The upstream parts of a river are connected with the downstream parts of the river. The water bodies or the rivers are connected laterally, which is called lateral connectivity, that is connected with the riparian forests or immediate upland areas. And then there is vertical connectivity, where there is a connection of the water bodies with the groundwater. So the freshwater ecosystems in the landscape are truly the mirror of the landscape in terms of what state our landscape is in. And none of the components of a landscape, be it a forest or agricultural area or an urban area, can survive without freshwater ecosystems and the benefits it provides. So like, to me at least, it makes common sense to look at a landscape from a basin or sub-basin scale, because that is what connects the whole landscape through its eco-hydrological processes. And I think that sort of puts in perspective why collaboration is so important. We talked about multi-actor platforms in a previous session, where different kind of actors need to come together, different kind of issues need to be talked about, there needs to be connectivity between conversations. And I think we need to mimic what happens in the landscape. We need to mimic what happens in ecological systems or socio-ecological systems, so to speak, to be able to arrive at solutions or actions that serve the purpose of conserving a landscape for our purpose and for nature itself. So I'll just leave it at that, and sort of Bala will help discuss the idea of mainstreaming that will form the segue for the next section of this workshop.
Thanks, Roshni. I think the last slide, literally. I think if I had to reflect on my own 2.5 decades of work, so I started off working in the Deccan Plateau on natural resource management, and at that time watershed development was an approach. Then moved to the hills, where we talked about springshed development, and then wetland conservation, and then now in the last 3-4 years, along with TNC, we've been trying to understand and imbibe freshwater ecosystem conservation. And the reason I'm saying is, over time, sometimes these sound as buzzwords, but these are also ways in which we address specific parts of the larger landscape, specific ecosystems, using certain approaches that, gel with our organizational philosophy, or the kind of approach that is prevalent at that time, something that is technically sound or, socially very feasible kind of thing. So, and there are many more. If we were to pool all the kinds of approaches and ways of working that we are all have done over time, I think we'll have a large pool. So what we are trying to do is to also try and relate freshwater ecosystem conservation, which is a very broad area, with the kind of work we are doing, look for overlaps, synergies, how that is getting impacted, and stuff like that. So at a at an organizational kind of a context in which most of us work, or in a network or in a movement, there might be potentially a spectrum of engagement, right, in which we might see ourselves, maybe we are implementing certain activities that are aligned with or that are contributing to freshwater ecosystem conservation. Maybe we have specific goals and objectives in some of our projects and programs. Maybe there is a very clear strategy around that, or maybe even we have it in our vision or mission of the organization. Maybe we are part of networks where we can promote this kind of thinking. So just to, as we get into the workshop mode, just to open up our way of thinking in terms of what all we are doing and how we are doing that and what we believe in and what is the kind of spectrum that this um, uh, freshwater ecosystem conservation kind of an arena offers, and then how can we identify synergies with each other and you know, work going forward. And we are also very keen to hear from you in terms of how the alliance could sort of you know, take things forward. And you saw the first steps, you heard about it from Roshni and Ashwini. Now I'd like to hand over to Akshay.
No, it's okay. Just want to open it out for any comments, thoughts, feelings. I don't know if there are any questions as such, but just want to open it up for the group to build a little bit about what we've been doing. If there are any clarifying questions also, you can pose it. There are a few of us here from the team. So, yes. Somebody start us off. Yes, please. If you can also introduce yourself, please.
I'm Sebastian Dordies from NKSW, National Platform of Small Scale Fish Workers. I'm basically from Goa, but our network is active in 18 states in India and Union Territory of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. I have one question because I could not, maybe I was missing this word. The people who do fishing on the freshwater bodies, various types of lakes, ponds, dams, and particularly more because I'm familiar with this area, for example, Buddhaji and I worked together in that area, and we just came across the Indrayani river the other day, and I'm pretty much connected and know this ground situation. Somehow the people who do fishing hold important stakes on these, and somehow I find it's not even referred even vaguely. I think there needs to be some, because without people, only science, without people, it's not going to work. I mean, I think we need to have some kind of a
Yeah, no, absolutely. Maybe we may have underrepresented it or not represented at all in the presentation, but maybe
not only, also for the legal reason, the small scale fishing communities, both freshwater as well as marine communities, today, current legal framework, international legal framework, have been designated as stewards of these water bodies, and it's important to we take advantage of it.
Yeah. सर थोड़ा सा कम कीजिए ना, हम बहुत डिस्ट्रैक्टिंग मैं मतलब वो कुछ बात कर रहे हैं, फ्लैश कर रहे हैं तो मैं yeah, so actually fair enough, and I'll let maybe Buddha ji can speak up to this a little bit. He's been part of the whole Upper Bima process. Maybe Ashwini can also talk about how it's come in, because I think, you know, we can speak a little bit abstractly in the alliance. Maybe a couple of concrete examples where it has come in, we can share. So one is, अगर बुद्धा जी आप share कर सकते हैं, Ashwini, जो how we've been talking about aquatic species in the CAP and other processes, and I'll just ask Roshni also to share a little bit about how we brought it in our whole visioning process. But first to Buddha ji, Ashwini.
I mean, I totally understand what you were saying, and that is something which we have kind of factored in. We have an organization who does a lot of on-ground citizen science or citizen walks for rivers, and actually there are fishing communities or fishermen who have reached out to them with photographs, with certain data that we used to find these fishes, and now all of a sudden we are not finding them, or there is a lot of sewage untreated STP water which is going into this river, and we are losing a livelihood because these fishes no longer we can catch, or so on and so forth. So we do have anecdotal, I could say, quote unquote data from them, as well as insights from them as what should be done and how we can prevent more of these kind of things.
बुद्धा जी अगर आपको थोड़ा सा
सभी को नमस्ते। मेरा सवाल ये है कि अभी पहले तो नदी बहती थी, तो नदी में बहुत सारी छोटी छोटी मछली मिलती थी, लोकल स्पीसीज, लेकिन जब डैम बन रहे हैं और जंगल में जो धूप हो रही है उसके कारण से पूरे डैम में भी मिट्टी आ रही है, नदी भी पूरी पैक हो गई। जो 12 महीने नदी बहती थी क्या हो रहा है कि जो लोकल पीसीज थे वो बहुत कम हो रही है। दूसरी बात ये है कि जब डैम बने तो उसमें बड़े बड़े कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जब आते हैं तो उसमें वो जो इंलैंड फिश डालते हैं, लेकिन उसके बावजूद कैट फिश भी डालते हैं, जैसे कि तिलापिया ऐसा। तो उसके कारण से जो कैट फिश के कारण से जो लोकल मच्छी थी छोटी छोटी वो खत्म हो गई है। और अभी इसके ऊपर अच्छा अध्ययन होना चाहिए कि जो 12 बहनी चाहिए, इसके लिए जो कैचमेंट डेवलपमेंट का प्लान होना चाहिए असेंबली।
And if you can just share how it's been brought into the concept note a little bit.
Yeah, so Indrayani River restoration proposal actually, Ranjit is not here from FES, but they have something called as a community living scorecard, and that is also an index which talks about which communities thrive on what and how their livelihood index is based on that particular ecosystem. So here it could be farmers, it could be fishermen whose livelihood is based on those particular fishing patches and which now are degraded, or those zones are being destroyed, or STP or polluted waters is being thrown into those rivers. So we are in the 3-year process which we are trying to submit as a Indrayani restoration proposal. There is also this whole component of understanding the livelihood, understanding whose livelihood is dependent on those freshwater systems, making a scorecard of that, and if we can do certain interventions, can we improve those livelihood patterns, or get back as close to where their livelihoods were.
So to just answer your question, so although you don't see specific mentions of fisheries or the dependence of fishing communities on freshwater ecosystems mentioned in this presentation, but when we say freshwater ecosystems, that is what we want to draw attention to. That freshwater ecosystems are, first of all, not just resources, but are socio-ecological systems that thrive on these interdependencies between ecological components and social components. And right now we're showing you more of a top-down approach where we're talking about our land at the national scale, again looking, pushing the focus on freshwaters as ecosystems. While and the way we do that is also through our regional collectives that focus on specific basin scale issues. Like in the case of Upper Beyond Basin, we talk about several issues. Like while we were developing the conservation action plan, there were thematic discussions on 6 to 7 thematic areas which included biodiversity, which included dependent livelihoods. So those elements may not be represented right now very explicitly, but those are definitely a part of it. Even within the alliance, we have members like Dr. Nachiket Kelkar, who is very well known for his fisheries work in the Ganga Basin, to give us that perspective, to keep us have those considerations in our wherever we get the opportunity to sort of leverage that. Right. So we are, like I said, we are still new. We are right now starting broad, but as we work ahead, as we get more inputs and more collaboration and more feedback, I think we can definitely fine-tune our work and in what direction we can focus on more specifically.
I think we need to pick up on this, maybe with you.
I think the point that I was raising about the decision making, I think now good that you said that. I'll take off from where she stopped. I think we need to pay attention to the international jurisprudence that has evolved over the past, I think, a decade or so, particularly with regard to Wanagani River in New Zealand, wherein the river has been declared as a living entity. And not just that, I mean, if we look at very carefully the New Zealand laws and kind of decision making about river, and who are the stakeholders and who is making decision, and with regard to the communities there, I think we've got some important leads to take on. Not the way the Supreme Court deals for Ganga River. I'm not.
I think that's where we got stuck with this specific issue, but I don't want to make this that. I know it's a dividing topic with lots of views. I'll thank you so much, and we have to connect after this. So,
my name is Joy. I'm from Pune. I also attended one or two meetings of the Upper Bima Collective. I'd like to make 2 points when you're talking about this whole freshwater ecosystems, conservations and things. One is what actually what Sebastian said. I think we should realize that Indian ecosystem, not only Upper Bima or Indrayani, these are all contested terrains. There are different interests being played out. What is interested is fisheries. They have their own interests. farming community has got their own interests. Now, for example, Indrani example Ashwini mentioned. Now, there is a decision to ban fishing in certain stretches. Now, who takes these decisions? And the impact of such decisions, which community bears? So, when we talk about a conservation, freshwater ecosystems and things, contestation, conflicts, interest need to be mapped on when we talk about stakeholders and things, and see how do we optimize all these things. I think is the important thing. Otherwise, things don't move. We know as an exercise, we can do it and think we can make a nice conservation plan and things, but you have to create an agency out of all these different stakeholders who are directly involved for their livelihood. It's a different ballgame. I think we need to pay attention to such conflicting interests that is played out, because river is a contested terrain. That's also conflicts. Contestations are important to be mapped on to any work we do on this. Second thing, it is not a clean slate.
Yeah.
We are working on a river system where there is no regulations come in, no. So now, especially Upper Bhima is a place where full of dams.
Yeah.
Full of dams and other things. So when you talk about the freshwater ecosystems and conservation and things, how do you factor in the intervention which is already there? Already upsides are taking place. What have you committed to certain type of uses and things? So I think, so when you do the baseline or the data collection and other things, I think probably you need to engage. I mean, it's nothing new which I'm saying, because some of these things have been articulated in meetings there. But this issue I think you need to bring in into this, and also probably widen this exercise to social movements who are working on Upper Bhima basin. There are, I know, farmers movement and other movements where they're talking about the unions of the fishers and things. Unless we reach out and go a little beyond this whole NGO's discourse, probably we don't reach out to many.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So we have to open this process to, to lot more people in the Upper Bhima basin.
Yes. Thank you so much. I think, sorry, you and that's it. Do you also want to share or going? नहीं आपके पीछे एक बार पहले प्लीज सर
नहीं आप उन्हीं को बोलना
Yes, sir, please, sir.
प्लीज सर
No, actually I don't have question, but I have few suggestions.
Yes, please, very welcome.
Basic conceptual things which you people have projected. I must appreciate that you are really working on a very large canvas, including the freshwater ecosystem. So on all the three major
Maybe give a mic.
ये
चालू कैसे होगा? हाँ अभी हो गया. And sir, if you can please also name an organization.
I am Dinesh Marathia. I am president of the Indian Society of Agriculture Economics. And basically by training I am an environmental economist. So I will just give suggestion on the three major, freshwater ecosystem. Let me begin with the riverine ecosystem services. Based on our work on the ecosystem services of River Ganga, which was funded by GIZ and the Ministry of Environment and Forest, and the Ken-Betwa River, and my earlier work on the Peace River region of Canada. So based on that, let me tell you that I was hearing this, your Indrani River concept. You have to include that how the special and temporal externalities which you are going to internalize, and whether you would like to suggest that who are the actors or the stakeholders who can be, dealt with some economic, kind of the parameters, or with the non-economic parameters, and can bring the issues that if suppose on the upper reach, I'm taking another example, if paper mill is there, and if they are putting lot of discharge which is killing the fisheries, the very rare fisheries, maybe fisheries with medicine uses.
So how do you account for this? This is I think you should have this externality, special and temporal externality, and try to address the issue there that it is not only the fisheries, but there are n number of the externalities being created. And then your restoration framework, you have to, I think, revisit it in include a very robust kind of the variables, and so that you can convince the policymaker that look here, it is not a simple river, but it is a total riverine ecosystem. I can follow that there is even effect on the minimum environmental flow. And then you have the problem with the, I'm sure you have the problem with the floodplain parameters also. The second thing which is, which comes with the wetland, the multi-use wetlands, are the ponds, or whatever name you would like to label it. But it's basically, it's a multifunctional, multi-use, many actors are there. And if you include the total, if you want to justify the total contribution of this freshwater ecosystem, this component of the wetlands, then you have to include all the aquatic crops, right from lotus to chestnut and makhana and other kind of thing, and fisheries also, because the fisheries is most important. And then you add the value on the migratory and the domestic birds which are providing this ecosystem, are providing the invaluable nest and home for these kind of things. So when you talk to the policymaker, or when you are looking for the some stakeholders, then maybe the third issue which you are talking about, the groundwater. Now we all know, those people who are working in the groundwater, that aquifer are the basically, in a larger context, it is the common pool resource. But unfortunately, the act and the regulation which we have in this country, that groundwater belongs to a person who has a land and he can extract any amount of the water, okay, for irrigation, for domestic or whatever. Now the thing is that it is at the interface of the common property resource and the private property resource. The moment, if we don't have the regulations and the revisit the acts, it is the open access, that is everybody child is nobody child kind of the thing. So the issue here is that the moment you talk about the aquifer, and many aquifer, if you discuss with the people who are working groundwater, then you will find that these aquifers are very much affected by the very high technology of extracting the groundwater. So if you are a very rich farmer and I am very poor, and if you get the your tube well extraction permit, you can ruin my future generation also. I will not get even a one drop of the water. You can extract whole water, possible water, from the aquifer. These are some of the suggestions. I don't know whether they make sense or not, but I thought that I will share with you.
Just a thought, because some of these comments are coming in. We'll play with the format a little bit just to make sure that we hear from everyone. Oh, talk to me. Sorry, 1 second. So, our original plan was based on our understanding of who would be in the room. I think there's a lot more expertise in the room for us to learn from, and maybe everybody can benefit instead of doing it in breakouts. So we'll ditch that idea. This has been a general pattern of the work with the Alliance. We come with a plan for a workshop, and depending on who's in the room and what they say, we change the plan. So you have a demonstration on how we work. So I just want to pose one question to the group. Please, sorry. मैं बस एक क्वेश्चन पोज कर दूं पूरे ग्रुप को, फिर सर से सुनेंगे, फिर एंड समबडी एल्स, एंड देन आपके पास आएंगे. नहीं, आपने हाथ ऊपर किया था. यस, मैम हैड पुट हर हैंड अप. या, so just a question I want to pose that I want more people to also respond to is, how does in the work that you're doing, how does that connect to uh, sort of connecting it with the larger sort of systemic conservation work like freshwater ecosystem conservation? So if you're working on a very specific thing, like sir talked about fisheries, how does that relate with other work that might happen, other conservation related projects that might happen, and how we might connect that? So just want to hear from on that front as well. So we'll hear from sir first.
I probably don't need the mic. My name is Bhakhtar Wali. I'm working with the Foundation for Ecological Security in the Papagni catchment area. Our team is called Papagni Regional Team. I'm based out in Madanpalli. So my question to you is that, I would like to understand, how do you deal with these transboundary issues? Transboundary means not just between two countries, but also between panchayats, between blocks, between districts, and then between different conflicting users also. For example, and also to achieve this goal of freshwater ecosystem, our goal is also to see that Papagni river flows continuously, and then the duration of the water flow is increased comparatively. How much is actually it is regulated by law? If you want to achieve, how much law regulation we should have? How much is the community's partnership, and then the change in the practices, the ability of the community to agree to change in the practices, and also how much is it is technical, how much the technology plays how much role. Next, the other point is also.
Wait, we forget all your questions. आपने one question में part 1, 2, 3 डाल दिया. एक
छोटे छोटे पूछेंगे.
नहीं तो respond भी करने दीजिए, नहीं तो हम भूल जाएंगे.
उसी के साथ में है, सपोर्ट करूंगा मैं. ये conflicting interest, what we see in Papagni region is that because it is, as I mentioned to you, 27% of the total Papagni catchment area is in commons. So the commons is barren hillocks or unproductive or less productive hillocks. What we do is we take up a lot of restoration activities in the catchments, and then we see that every year we see that there is prolonged duration of the stream flow to the these ponds, tank. We call them as tanks. And again, we have bore wells. So the moment the bore wells are dug deepen, so the base flows are gone. If there is no base flow, there is no water flowing to the Papagni stream also. So, and then there are bores and then tanks and then the competitive digging. How do we see this coordination and among these issues, and then what actually would help us to understand so that we also, based on the upper Bhima catchment work that you did, we can adapt that into our Papagni catchment?
Let me see if I can keep track of your questions. Your first question was on transboundary issues, right? I mean, I think you asked very hard questions that cannot be answered or dealt with in one exercise or one conversation. The first step that we did was why we focused on upper Bhima, because like Ashwini was saying, there is a Bhima basin which has an upper part and a lower part, but the Bhima river flows between Maharashtra and Karnataka. We focused on upper Bhima because we wanted to minimize the transboundary issues between states. So upper Bhima is, 99% of upper Bhima is Maharashtra. So, and it's the upper part of the basin. So whatever happens there, it will impact in what happens there and also below, right? And there's nothing upstream, so things can be contained in that particular basin, right? So that was our first approach. Okay, since we are starting, we don't want to, because upper Bhima basin, like everybody shared, is rife with several issues, has more than 200 dams and pollution and agriculture, everything is there. So to at least have some bit of control over that, so we focused on upper Bhima basin as it falls in one state. While you talked about districts and talukas, that is something that will need to be dealt with as we start as the Upper Bhima collective members start with their on-ground projects, and they've been dealing with it with their own projects in the past, so they have the know-how. Yeah.
And I think in that process, we realized that we should have also convened properly in other parts of the basin and made sure that people who work with a focus in those parts are also present. So that's the thing. I think our role is not necessarily to say we bring the expertise. The expertise already exists. Our role is also to curate the right people, and we learned that. That's a mistake we made. So now when we started thinking of, okay, how do we do this? So we Solapur में September में workshop होगा, and that hopefully that a new group of people will come in with their experiences and things like that. So that is definitely a big learning we had in the last year or so. And so now when we think about, oh, if we have to work in another part of the country, another basin, what are the locations that we can have so that there is better representation also and curation of the right people in the, that represents the whole thing. So that is something that we made a mistake, we learned from that and trying to work on it. So I think that's one thing. I just also want to say is all these questions are also input for us as to what we should be doing better, where we are working and where we are going to be working.
I think one very important thing he raised, what in a way Joy and also said is this conflicting interests. Basically, it's about transboundary, conflicts, and also within the boundary also the conflict between priorities of water use. So I think what in the process, and the kind of what as a group it can evolve, as he was saying, is how to actually deal with this. So because every basin, every geography has its own socio-cultural, economic and other ramifications, So for Papagni, it is different. For different basin areas, it's different. So what we are trying to do is, how are the policies at the moment are dealing with those? And one thing this network is all about is also the convergence between different interest groups, maybe at a later point of time, but then while learning together. So I think these are relevant questions at the moment, but getting an answer to this at this moment for the alliance, I think we have to work it together. Yeah.
Pending question here, we only address the first part. So regarding the other parts of how different interventions impact water and all that, for that, just a short question, you will need to understand the interconnection, water flows in the landscape. The interconnections between surface water to river water flow, the component of base flows, groundwater inflows, outflows. And the better that understanding is, the better we can understand what kind of interventions have what kind of impact on the water volume or water discharge in the river. Yeah.
Interest of the other time, I just kept it very short. Otherwise, as I mentioned to you, in Karnataka, the tank sluices are closed. There has been in the news that no Hydra everywhere, Hyderabad, so support from the government to evacuate all the encroachments.
And just, one thing I just want to say also is, I don't think we have the answers. That is becoming quite clear. But I think what we're trying to do is also have ways in which we're asking these questions together, right? So inviting you to come join us to ask these questions together, but ma'am.
Okay, my name is Vaini. I'm basically an environment activist from Sikkim. I'm working with affected citizens of Tista. So when we talk about this freshwater thing, so if you see in Sikkim, it's a very small state, to have more than 30 mega hydropower project, and to have 58 pharmaceutical companies, which is built in these two major rivers in Sikkim, River Tista and River Range. So just imagine what will be the impact on this fresh water. Another thing that we are not talking about in, in mainland India is the glaciers. Last year on 4th of October 2023, we had this massive glacier, South Lonak Glacier Lake outburst. that just washed away 1,200 megawatts hydropower project, where the investment of this project was more than 14,000 crore. And we've been shouting, we've been raising this concern for last 15 to 16 years, yet there was no response from the government, from the center government also. So why we have a very long movement in Sikkim, it's been 16, 17 years that we are fighting against the dams. But now what we are not able to stop those dams, like the one which got washed away. We had to file a PIL in 2009 when I was very young in the college time. We have raised the concern about Glacier Lake outbursts, but even the court also didn't listen. So then after, it's not feasible to have such big dams in such a vulnerable area like seismological area. So when as indigenous community, we talk about conservation and protecting, but indigenous community, especially for my community, the Lipcha community, we worship nature. We worship Mount Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain, all these major two rivers, River Tista and Rangit. Now we have one river which is one of the best tributaries of River Tista called River Rongyong. So what we have a very strong, deep belief is after we die, our soul travel back from this river to the foothills of Mount Kanchenjunga, where we call it Pumzuleng, where soul resting place. So we are having a difficult time how to save this river from the hydropower. So it's been many years, 15 years. We have not able to, we are able to stop because of Gram Sabha not giving clearance to the companies. But yet it's feeling very difficult day by day because the community from my regions of Zongu, it's only we are 5,000 community. Across whole of Sikkim, if you see the population, we are hardly 50,000. So the voices, in democracy, it should be a majority, majority voice we heard. So it is very difficult for us to, how to save this, and for us, these landscapes are not just landscape. Our origin, our the creation stories are based on this river. Some I'll be talking. My session is tomorrow. So for us is our creation stories are based in from river, from lake, from springs, from cave. For we can't imagine how the policies of the government will just go and acquire and take it back. But the reason I come is why it's really concerning is it's a Kanchenjunga National Park declared by World Heritage Site. And it's a bio-rich diversity. We have rich butterflies, birds, streams, and the hot springs and all. But it's very difficult, we feel sometimes we are left out because of the, with the geographical area. So the problem right now we need to understand is when such disaster came last year also, the mainland people doesn't know about all this. So, and even if you see about the disaster that is happening in Sikkim, it's even the security point of view also, it's so pathetic. The indigenous community, even Indian Army, till today, they are using bridge which is being made by the indigenous community, by cane and bridge, These are the conditions. The Grave and BRO are the most corrupt. We have, if you see other border area in China, they have four-lane road, their railways are coming up, but we are still lagging to have one highways, Recently, when I coming for the session also, I was not sure because we are taking a longer route. It was taking 8 hours, 10 hours. Luckily, when I was coming, it was just open. So it is continuing, and even the railways are going. That will impact the spring water. It's going to dry up. So there need to a lot of important, serious things to be discussed. So this is what, I just want to share. I don't have question. I don't have any solution also. But this is what is happening in our northeast in Sikkim. Thank you.
I think, sir, if you want to, sorry, I caught you on a call.
Your format here. मेरा नाम नंदलाल बख्शी, मैं टैगोर सोसाइटी फॉर रूरल डेवलपमेंट की संस्था है, बंगाल वेस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, बट आई एम वर्किंग इन झारखंड लास्ट 30 years. सो रिगार्डिंग द कॉमन्स, एक्चुअली हमने जो देख रहे थे कि बंगाल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बोल रहे हो कि जैसा जो रिवर है करीब करीब 96 रिवर है बंगाल में जो ड्राइंग है, हमने जो एक सर्वे किए थे, ये भी 10 साल पुराना सर्वे रिपोर्ट है, उसमें देख रहा हूँ कि करीब करीब 100 रिवर्स जो ड्राइंग है, इसमें जो मछली है, जो इंडिजिनस अगर मछली है तो धीरे धीरे ख़त्म ही हो रहा है, तो मिलता नहीं है, मार्केट में भी नहीं मिलता है। जो आपने हाईलाइट किए है ना, बहुत ही रेलेवेंट है, ताकि ये बहुत ही पुराना परंपरा से चलता रहता है, लेकिन ये अभी तक नहीं है, धीरे धीरे ख़त्म ही हो रहा है, तो इसका मार्केट में भी बहुत प्राइस भी है। तो हमने जो एक इनिशिएटिव लिए थे बंगाल में, बंगाली में बोलता है कि मीन मंगल, मीन मीन्स फिश, तो रिलीजिंग द स्पॉन इन द रिवर, ओपन रिवर, क्विंटल्स ऑफ स्पॉन्स हमने रिवर में रिलीज़ किया, एक सेलिब्रेशन का माध्यम से एक कम्युनिटी मूवमेंट क्रिएट करने का हमारा प्रयास था। तो उसमें जैसे गंगा नदी में भी हमने किया, बहुत सारा नदी में किए, ताकि लोकल कम्युनिटी को इन्वॉल्व करके उन्हें किया। इसमें जो अपॉर्चुनिटी वाला देख रहा हो कि नदी सबसे बड़ा एक एग्जांपल, अच्छा एग्जांपल है कॉमन्स का, जो सबका है, एक कॉमन्स का बहुत ही अच्छा एग्जांपल है। ये पुराना जो दिन से ये चल रहा है, तो इसके ऊपर कोई ध्यान भी नहीं है, गवर्नमेंट का भी बहुत ध्यान नहीं है, तो इसके ऊपर बहुत ही फोकस करना चाहिए। एक कॉमन्स का मैनेजमेंट, कॉमन्स का ऊपर जो अपॉर्चुनिटी देख रहा हूँ, इसमें करना चाहिए। तो इसमें हमने जो इनिशिएटिव लिए थे, तो उसमें वही है कि फिश को रिलीज़ करना, फिश स्पॉन को रिलीज़ करना, तो कम्युनिटी इसमें भागीदारी, कम्युनिटी भागीदारी बहुत ज़रूरी है, ताकि गवर्नमेंट इसमें ज़्यादा इन्वेस्ट नहीं करेंगे, कम्युनिटी खुद से करेंगे तो ये हो सकता है। तो मेरा एक एग्जांपल है, इसीलिए हम शेयर करना चाह रहे थे। तो एक हमारा सफल भी रहा। बाद में हम लोग झारखंड में भी शुरू किए थे, जहाँ पे संभव है, ताकि झारखंड का नदी ज़्यादातर रेन फेड है, ज़्यादा दिन पानी रहता नहीं है, तो उसमें भी बरसात के समय हमने शुरू किए थे, ताकि एक एग्जाम्पल क्रिएट करने का था। थैंक यू।
You wanted to say something, sir? Excuse me. Hello.
Thanks for the opportunity. And Ejali sir, I also do not have a specific exam in specific or intro. Yeah, exactly. I am Biswarup Sahu. I am with you, working with UNDP and belongs to Odisha. My specialization in forestry sector, and I work on Forest Right Act only. So about freshwater governance, my experience is quite limited. But along with that, what I want to say that last year we have piloted, and yesterday somebody here, Mr. Otta had also told, we have piloted a project for these hill streams. Basically, if you go to hill regions, not like Sikkim, but in Odisha also, the hill regions majorly depend on the spring water system only. So the tap water system is now for quite addressing the drinking water purpose, but for the rest agriculture purposes, auxiliary livelihood auxiliary activities, we require the stream water only. And the issue with the stream water is now they are no more perennial. Majority of stream waters are earlier perennial, which are now drying up. So we have to think of how to make them or regenerate, revive. We have to derive strategies. The Freshwater Alliance may look into it, that how to work in with those streams also. Because Department of Water Resource is also no more interested in all those things right now. So such alliance is really a welcome stop, because certain policy related interventions are also required, where we can push it into the Department of Water Resource also. In our state, we have piloted that scheme, that project, with the aim that Water Resource Department also look into this hill stream issues, but they are quite not interested. So I hope and wish my best to this Freshwater Alliance that you get success, and may जो communities हैं वो आपसे काफी कुछ benefit पाए.
They are not interested. I think, sir, and then sir.
Thank you. I am Sanjay Sharma from FES Northeast Guwahati office. Very glad to hear from Mayal Meet about the Northeast context. In the beginning, I thought we were talking about all the river systems, but I thought we were going a little bit more on Bhima and Papagni basins. Uh, One of the things I just wanted to mention in the context of the Northeast, because there's a lot of dynamics. After every, say, 5 to 10 to 15 kilometers, you will find different communities. And across the region, you will find different governance structures. You have Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, all Schedule 6 areas and Article 371A, 371D. So we need to understand about the governance of these natural resources, especially the river ecosystems. And another thing, because these rivers are governed by the local, more these village councils or the local institutions are even more powerful in governing than the government regimes. So we need to understand that. Secondly, I just wanted to mention about, I think spring systems were mentioned, previous person. So we did a study in Meghalaya in Garo Hills where around 90 springs we could identify, and we found around 34 springs which are very critically, like some interventions is required, they're drying up. And you know, the springs are feeding the small rivers and goes to the main larger rivers. So working on river ecosystem will also need to intervene on the springs in the Himalayan areas I'm talking about. So we need to focus, do some study or how to rejuvenate these springs so that it supports the main rivers. Yeah. I thought we were missing that, so I was just flagging it.
Please, I'm just saying that I just want to share what our approach or way of thinking is. How are we curating the right group in a way, as opposed to trying to say we have to figure things out from scratch. Sir, sorry, after he.
डॉक्टर सीताराम वर्मा, कृषि एवं पारिस्थितिक विकास संस्थान अलवर राजस्थान से हूँ मैं। हमारी संस्था और जो कॉमन्स हैं उनके ऊपर काम कर रही है। कॉमन्स को राजस्थान में बेसिकली जो है कुछ जगह वेस्टर्न राजस्थान में ऑरेंज के नाम से जानते हैं और ईस्टर्न राजस्थान में देवबनी और इसके नाम से जानते हैं। तो इनमें जो मेन प्रॉब्लम जो आ रही है ऑरेंज के ऊपर कि जो है रिकॉर्ड में, रेवेन्यू रिकॉर्ड में ये जो ज़मीनें ज़्यादातर पॉस्चर लैंड, ग्रास लैंड इस तरह से हैं, वो ऑरेंज के नाम से या देवबनी के नाम से रिकॉर्ड में नहीं है। जिसके कारण जैसे स्पेशली आपने देखा होगा वेस्टर्न राजस्थान में गवर्नमेंट क्या कर रही है, उस लैंड को रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, विंड प्लांट्स, सोलर प्लांट्स के लिए अलॉटमेंट कर देती है और जो चरागाह की जो ज़मीन है वो कम हो रही है। तो अभी हमारी संस्था ने पहले अरावली हिल्स के जो ऑरेंज थे उनके ऊपर काम किया, तो उसका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन किया था, वो रिकॉर्ड में लिया था। अभी जो वेस्टर्न राजस्थान और जैसलमेर है वहाँ के 100 ऑरेंज के ऊपर उनका पूरा डॉक्यूमेंटेशन किया, सर्वे करवाया, कहाँ कितना कितना बायोडाइवर्सिटी क्या है, लाइव स्टॉक कितना है, डोमेस्टिक एनिमल्स कितना है, वाइल्ड एनिमल्स, और विशेष रूप से वहाँ पे जो वाटर बॉडीज़ थी ऑरेंज के अंदर, चाहे वो वाटर स्ट्रीम्स हों चाहे पॉन्ड्स हों, तो उनका सब सर्वे करवा एक डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करके। और एक हमारे जो अमन जी इन्वायरमेंटल हमारी संस्था अमन सिंह जी, उन्होंने एक PIL लगाई हुई थी सुप्रीम कोर्ट में। उस PIL के अगेंस्ट में ऑर्डर हुए थे, तो उसके आधार पर अभी राजस्थान गवर्नमेंट ने करीब 100 ऑरेंज से ज़्यादा के ऊपर जो एक नोटिफिकेशन जारी किया था उनको एज डीम्ड फॉरेस्ट घोषित करने के लिए डिक्लेयर किया था उन्होंने नोटिफिकेशन, तो वो अभी कंसिडरेशन में है। तो इस तरह से जब तक इसका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं होगा तो ये हमारी जो ऑरेंज और जो कॉमन्स से हैं वो उनको कोई भी किसी भी गवर्नमेंट जहाँ जैसा उसका मिलता है उनको अलॉट कर देती है और धीरे धीरे जो है उसकी ज़मीनें जा रही हैं। तो मैं यही कहना बताना चाह रहा हूँ कि इसके ऊपर डॉक्यूमेंट से ऊपर काम होना चाहिए और जो हमारी संस्था में जो ओरेंज के अंदर जो पानी की कमी होती है डोमेस्टिक एनिमल्स के लिए और जो वाइल्ड एनिमल्स वहाँ पर जो होते हैं उनके लिए वाटर बॉडी का जो है रेस्टोरेशन का काम जो है करते हैं, डीपनिंग करते हैं, जहाँ ज़रूरत होती है वाटर शेड के हिसाब से नया कंस्ट्रक्शन भी करते हैं। तो सबसे बड़ा ये है कि इनके कॉमन्स के बचाव के लिए अगर हम ये चाहते हैं कॉमन्स फ्यूचर में ज़िंदा रहें, क्यों आज का जब ये कोरोना फैला था तो ऑक्सीजन की जो क्राइसिस हुई थी वो आप सब लोगों ने हमने सबने देखी है, और अगर कॉमन्स नहीं बचेंगे तो शायद आगे का फ्यूचर जो है इससे भी भयानक होगा। तो इनको बचाने के लिए हम इनका सर्वे करके डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करके गवर्नमेंट में प्रेशर बना करके इनको बचा पाएंगे तो शायद हमको भविष्य में ऑक्सीजन मिल पाएगी, अन्यथा जो है बहुत नुकसान होगा पीढ़ी को। ये कहना बस। थैंक यू।
Hi, I'm Soma. I'm an assistant professor at ASCII, Hyderabad. I also work on urban water governance, and along with what has been said about springs in the mountainous regions, there is something I always wondered about, and my work is on Western Himalaya. That when we talk about spring rejuvenation and springs management, the approach is different in rural areas as compared to that with urban areas. Because, for example, in a city like Shimla, which faces severe water crisis episodes now and then, there's a lot more possibility of rejuvenating the springs and creating community groups which can take care of the springs because they are still dependent on them, many of the springs. But unfortunately, not much work has been done on rejuvenating and managing the springs within the city. Rather, this focuses more on the rural areas, like how to manage the spring shed and all of that. I wonder why that is the case. Well, in the cities, there is a big push for infrastructure projects and bringing water from far off. So maybe these are also things that we can think upon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't see any. So.
Hi, I'm Ronak. I'm from Udaipur, work with Seva Mandir. So I think fresh water in our area is a little bit different. Talab ke upar zyada hai, lakes ke upar, but we also have river movements going on. I think the last point which was mentioned, मैं उसी के संदर्भ में सोच रहा था कि when we talk about fresh waters, fisheries, agriculture, these are all still areas where there is a direct livelihood interest और उन categories के लोगों को जोड़ा जाता है. But what about normal people? उदयपुर में lake movement ज़्यादा build हुआ because of the normal citizens engagement, which is for leisure. मुझे वो lakes की ज़रूरत है. So एक जो सुबह बात हुई थी समाज की, एक आध्यात्मिक का भी रिवर्स का और उसका एक इंडिया में काफ़ी बड़ा कनेक्शन है. So somewhere I think we also need to build narratives for freshwater bodies which is beyond livelihoods. That's kind of one area which I'm just kind of want to bring in, which can help. जो city में गांव में हो जाएगा because watershed है वो. शहर में स्प्रिंग का उपयोग क्या है? जब तक वो उपयोग को हम और बिल्ड नहीं करेंगे, या मैं जस्ट यूजिंग द एग्जांपल ऑफ योर्स, बट लेक्स से उदयपुर में लेक्स पे फिशरी नहीं होता है, बट देन पीपल केम टुगेदर बाय अ लॉन्ग 10 years 15 years ऑफ मूवमेंट दैट वी वांट अच्छे लेक हमारे एरिया में. एंड ऑफ कोर्स नाउ इट इज लिंक विद टूरिज्म, तो उसमें और प्रॉब्लम शुरू हो गए हैं. देयर इज अनदर इशू नाउ, बट आई एम जस्ट काइंड ऑफ वन पॉइंट. या
I think this, yeah, please go ahead. I'll come to you just after.
So the context in which I was saying about the springs in the cities was that in many cases it is seen that the low-income group populations are still dependent on the springs for their as their primary water sources. And since these springs are not taken care of like properly, they risk water contamination as well. So, that
Need required in terms of that, and it's mostly. Yeah, he's just had his hand.
This is in response to your question that you posed about relationship between our expertise of work, that's fisheries in my case, and conservation. Just a brief answer to that. With two examples, one from Manipur with regard to Loktak Lake. There we have a local fishing union associating with the state government or lobbying with the state government that they be involved in management of the lake. On the question that he raised about tourism, that's very much a part of the problem there in Loktak Lake, and tourists are beginning to get preference and locals are feeling marginalized. So the conservation, yes, but conservation for whom? Do you replace local people with tourists? One, about Manipur. Second is about Kashmir, Wular Lake. We have a union of fishing communities there. After certain lobbying, 15 days back, government of Kashmir has formed a Wular Conservation and Management Authority, in which they have included the fishing union as a representative on the management of this authority. And this is extremely good, because our slogan has been that in the conservation, the communities, local communities, may be indigenous as well as non-indigenous, but who are local, should not be excluded from decision making, but should be part of the decision making. The slogan has been nothing for us without us. Thank you. Sure.
The word, but angling or leisure fishing also, right?
Sports fishing, yes.
So how does that intersect with? Because I think at our Calcutta conference there was somebody who was talking about that.
We have in Sikkim also.
Sorry? You have that in Sikkim also, yeah. So how does that intersect with fishers union? Where does that sit? Like you said, tourists is one thing, but maybe these are local.
The sports fishing, they have a particular code of conduct in which they are supposed to catch the fish, get the fish on board, take photograph, and leave the fish back again. That's fish. It's not for the livelihood purpose. If they do keep the fish, that is illegal. They can be raided.
Just want to respond to a couple of things that came up earlier. I think वो commons के land category की जो बात थी, I think wetlands में और springs में भी वही problem है कि when you look at the land records, administrative records, those things are invisible. You don't find springs, you don't find wetlands. So it's very easily, wastelands होता है, and it's easy to get rid of them or do something else. And इसमें एक बड़ी problem है जो data related है कि we don't know how many springs there are and in the country. Even wetlands कितने हैं पता नहीं है. We have done a water body census kind of thing, but उसमें फिर we have to see, we keep monitoring कि over time do we have, and the bigger ones are there. We always talk of Ramsar sites. But that little spring that the community depends on, or on the small wetland on which a small town might depend on, those kind of get missed out. And talking about the urban springs thing, I worked on the Kunnur, which is a small town in the Nilgiris. If you look at the water resources for them, 6 or 7 springs, very high discharge springs in that region, they are the main sources of water. And we worked with the municipality a little bit, tried to understand them, mapped out the catchments, and we had help from Aquadam. We did a geological study, exactly which catchments, which villages you need to talk to and convince them to conserve. And what really happened was that they just were negotiating with, because it's also the catchment of the river Bhavani and all that, very rich, high rainfall areas in the upper reaches. The municipality negotiated for a water channel, water pipeline from the upper reaches to the town. Just fill up the dams with water from outside the catchment. And it's over. It's an engineering project. Water is coming, and the best thing is we don't have to do anything about it. So that attitude of water is coming, like water is coming through pipes. A spring means you actually understand it's a living ecosystem from which you are getting it. You have to take responsibility. Somewhere I think it's that administrative management capacity is also not there, where you are actually dealing with these kind of systems. You take care of them, and then you will get the water, and you will get the other services.
I'd like to conclude over here. मैं close करूँगा. नहीं मैं close करूँगा. नहीं.
Sorry, क्योंकि वो फिर कोई मुझे आके बोलेगा कि यार आपने बहुत लंबा चला दिया सेशन. Thank you so much. Like I said, हम लोग breakouts करने वाले थे वगैरह, but I think ये बहुत rich hard discussion. I don't know आप लोगों ने क्या इससे लिया है, हमें बहुत इससे सीख मिली है. So I am hoping sir आप हमें recording देंगे ताकि हम ढंग से notes बना सकें. Okay. आप लोगों ने अपना नाम और जो है वो post-its I think Paras has collected. I think from the master registration sheet we'll get your emails. If it's okay, we'll try and document some of the points that have come up and what we are taking away, right? What we are learning from this, because this was really an avenue for us to learn from you, and we'll share that back with you also. And maybe we can connect a little bit more on how we can do some of this together. But thank you so much for your time and your patience and your expertise.
Very good moderation.
Thank you.